comes to the get of a Shrivmera, who said that the get should be valid 1 minute before I die, over there, they're not allowed to be together. They're not allowed to be miyachid. And over there comes to the get of a Shrivmera, who said that. I'm sorry about the feedback. But the get of Shrivmera, we said that if her shivcha was there, it wouldn't be a shmir. It would still be a problem. So we have three terutzim to this. We had three terutzim to this kasha. We had Rav Papa, Rav Papi, and Rav Ashi. So Rav Papi told us that b'shvuya hikilu. In other words, normally we would not believe her shivcha because her shivcha would remain loyal to her and protect her. But by shvuya, since we don't want these women to become aser, we're mekel and we accept the inferior edus of her own loyal shivcha. Rav Papa said, in fact, we don't accept edus at all. Ha b'shivcha dida, ha b'shivcha didei. We don't accept her shifcha's testimony. We only accept the testimony of his shifcha, because she is not loyal to her. The shifcha of her husband is not loyal to her. And the third text was Rabashi, and that was, in fact, shifcha dida is nemenes, because when do we say that a shifcha will be loyal? That's to withhold testimony, to be quiet. But to actually speak out and say a lie, that even a loyal shivcha would not do. And therefore, in our case, in order for it to be mutter, her shivcha has to speak out and say a lie that she was not violated, and therefore, we don't assume a shivcha would lie about that, and therefore the shivcha is believed. So just to summarize, according to Rav Papi, the shivcha is believed. According to Rav Papa, the shivcha is not believed. And according to Rav Ashi, the shivcha is believed. So Rav Ashi and Rav Papi both agree that by shvuya, the shivcha is believed. Rav Papi, it's because of the kula of shvuya. And Rav Ashi is because they have to speak out and say something. But regardless, they both agree that her shivcha, her loyal shivcha, would be believed. And Rav Papa said that her loyal shivcha would not be believed. The Gemara then wanted to suggest that this machlokes is totally in a machlokes tonight, because the Gemara quotes two conflicting brises. Zu edus ish v'isha. Zu edus, for this edus to say that a shvuya was not violated and she's mutter to her baal, who's a kohen, who's believed to say such an edus? Ish v'isha tinik v'tinoikis, even avia v'ima v'acheya v'achoisa. All these people are believed to say that testimony. So we have one brisa that says that a shivcha would not be believed. We have another brisa that says except for her herself and her husband. So we have two brises that argue in this halacha. Will the loyal shivcha of the missus be believed to say that her missus was not violated? So Zok to Gemara, there are Papi and Rav Ashi, who both said that a loyal shivcha is believed to make her boss muteres tanoi. There has to be a machlokes tanoim, because we have a brisa that says beferish lo yabda v'shivchasa. There's no way for a Papi and Rav Ashi to explain that other than saying that we disagree with it. Rather, we hold like the second brisa, who says that even the shivcha is nemenes. But there Rav Papa, who said that by shivcha dida it's not believed. Does he also have to say that this is a machlokes between these two tanoim? The first Tana who says that the shivcha is not believed, and the second Tana who says the shivcha is believed? Zok Gemara, no. Rav Papa might say that everybody holds that normally a shivcha is not believed, and this machlokes here that we just illustrated between the two brises is arguing about something else. So really, everybody holds that the shivcha is not believed. The brisa that says the shivcha is believed is speaking in a special circumstance. Kitanya Amalacha Papa. Kitanya Hiba Mesicha Lefituma. Normally, everybody agrees that a loyal shivcha is not believed unless she expressed it Mesicha Lefituma. So she's not coming and saying testimony in Bezdin. You heard the shivcha just talking to her friends without any intention to make any type of statement. There, there's a special namonas that we believe even a loyal shivcha. Just like Rav Dimi Omer Rab Chanan Kartigno, Rab Chanan Bar Tekno said, Mishtoi Maisa Mishtoi, he used to say over, Reb Chanan Kategno used to say over a story. Maisa Bal of Rabbi Shua ben Levi. V'amrla, there were different players. It was Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Mishtoi Maisa Bal of Rabbi. Rabbi Shua ben Levi was saying over a story that happened in front of Rabbi. There was a person who was being Messiach Lefi Tumah. Now we said over here, normally Bina, a son is not believed to say that his mother was not violated. Here you had a case of a son who was Messiach Lefi Tumah. Vamar, he was speaking to his friends. Vamar ani v'imi nishbinu levein ha'oiv dekechavim. We were captured together, but I always was watching my mother at every moment. If I had to go get water from a well, I was focused on my mother. Lilkat eitzim, if I had to go gather wood, dait yalimi. Now, I don't think he just meant I was thinking about her. He must have meant I was watching her, because otherwise thinking about her wouldn't be wouldn't be valid to say that she was not Nensa. But it means
the language is thinking about her.
But that can't be what it means, because how could that possibly be considered any type of verification?
I don't know, but it's really weird to use that lashon under these circumstances.
I agree. But the Hesiya Rebbe Lekunapiv, Rebbe took that as a proof that he watched her the whole time, and since he wasn't coming specifically to be matir his mother, it was accepted. So, but yeah, it was like a lashon daiti to be understood, to be interpreted as he was actually watching. Maybe what it means is he went from his tent or wherever he was with his mother to get water. So he couldn't see his mother, but he could watch the tent to make sure no one came into it. But daiti is still a little bit of a hard word to explain. So let's see the next Mishnah. This is the final stretch of the final daf of this pair. Amar Reb Zachariah ben Akatzev. Reb Zachariah ben Akatzev said. Now, Reb Zachariah ben Akatzev was a kohen. We had yesterday, Reb Zachariah ben Akatzev said an edus together with Reb Yosy a kohen. But Reb Zachariah ben Akatzev was also a kohen. The question is, why was he called Katzev? There are those who say that he was the son of a butcher, but there are those who say that he was the son of an investment advisor, a venture capitalist who made deals.
So a butcher.
That's one shot that he was a butcher. There's another shot that
he was a butcher.
Oh, I hear. It's synonymous. And the third shot that I heard is that he was a gabbai tzedakah. So he was koitzev. He created amounts of how much tzedakah was given. But he made a shvuah hamoy nazeh. And there's two pshatim in how this is a shvuah. Either it's referring to the Beis HaMikdash, this dwelling of the Beis HaMikdash, or we learned in Chagiga that there's seven different skies, there's seven rakiyas. One of them is referred to Amoy. And what did he swear? That I was holding my wife's hand the whole time. From when the marauding goyim who could have violated my wife came to Yerushalayim and told her left, I was holding her hand. In other words, I saw her. I was watching her. He was being made for her. But we know that a husband cannot be made for a wife. They told him, it doesn't matter that you are saying this edus, because your edus is not valid. Tana, we learned the afal pikein, even though she was usher to him, he didn't just cast her away. Rather, yichad labayis b'chatzerei, he kept her, except he didn't have relations with her. He kept her in a house, in his yard, but he would make sure never to be miyachad with her. And therefore, if she ever had to leave, she would leave, and then her children would leave. In other words, her children were always there whenever they were together. So when she came back, first her children came in to make sure there was no yichud, and only then did she come in. What would be with a divorced couple? A divorced couple are not supposed to hang out together. What would be, could a grusha live together in the same chotzer with her ex-husband, but with shmira that there shouldn't be yichud? Rashi gives more detail, but grusha koyin shigiris es ishtoi ma'ulader imei b'chotzer. So it sounds from Rashi that we're not going to be concerned about a penuya, but we're not concerned about a Eshes Yisrael who is mutter to her husband who is divorced, who had divorced her, but a kohen where there would be an isser if she got together with him, there would be an isser. That's where the shaila is. Aval hacha, I'm sorry, the grusha mai. Ma'ulasus begrusha came. Hasam who do b'shvuya kilo. Maybe because she was a shvuya and she went through such a tragic situation. There they were makel that she could live in the same chotzer as her husband. Aval hachaloi, but not by a grusha. Aydum aloishna, or maybe even a grusha could live in the same area as her husband with certain precautions. Tashma, the Tanya we learned. Hamagarshas ishtoi loisi nasei b'shchanasei. So now we're speaking about he divorced his wife remarried, loisi nasei. She remarried. When she remarries with her husband, with her new husband, she shouldn't live in his shchuna, in his neighborhood. We're going to see what shechuna means. It's a technical term. Why should she not live in his neighborhood? She'll know his facial expressions, his symbols, and that could cause them to sneak away somewhere and be over an avera. Now she's an eishish. Shema yavoyu lidei avera. Maybe they're going to come to an avera. Let's look at this one in shchunasa. She's not allowed to marry and live with her new husband in his shechuna, which would typically be touched as neighbor. Lav dafka koyin. Correct. V'im hoya koyin, and if her ex was a koyin, then Rashi says, "Afilu loinisis." Even if she wasn't remarried and she's not an eishish, but there's an isser for a koyin to marry a grusha, even his own grusha. Then loisader imay b'mavui. She shouldn't live with him in the mavui. So now we have a different word, a mavui. Loisader imay b'mavui shema yavai aleha, because he might be boyal her. The koyin asher begrusha, and the koyin is asher. Aval Yisrael, but if it's the Yisrael, Zok Rashi calls man shalai nises. If she wasn't remarried and there's no isser esasish, tada b'shchunasa, she could live in his neighborhood. And we're interchanging with the word mavi and shchuna. We don't know what's going on. So let's see Tosfos, the top Tosfos. Zok Tosfos, the kivin the pnuya, since she's a pnuya, killay. It's less hamertim. This isn't just a married woman who we only want to keep him out of her shchuna. We want him to be not very close to her because we're afraid of an affair. But if he's further away, the chaymer of the Isser Misa of living with Neshish will protect him. But a kohen where the Isser isn't so great, so when we're more afraid that they'll get together, we want to keep them even further apart than in the Shechuna. We want to even keep them out of a Movli. Avalon Nisis, but if she was married, now she's a Ishish, and there's the chaymer Isser that keeps them apart, Ein Tzarech Laharchik Ela Kedei Shechuna. You only have to be out of the Shechuna. Now Tosfos tells what that is. Dainu Gimel Batim. So if there's an Isher protecting them from getting together, because people are going to be careful when it comes to an Isser Misa, then they only have to be 3 houses apart. But if there's only an Isser Lav, like a coin to Grusha, then they have to be further apart because they don't have the natural Shmira of the Chaymer Isser. There's actually Rishonim who argue and say Punkt Verkehrt. They say a coin can be closer and the Shchuna is further, because Al Isser Lav doesn't need such a shmira. But for an Isser Misa, we want to be extra careful. So there's a machlokes about who we're more machmer for, the Isser Lav or the Isser Misa. Zog to Gemara, Im Hoya Kfar Katan, what if it was a small little village? Then Zehoya Maisa, this in fact happened that they were living in a small village together. The Amr, when they said Kfar Katan Nidoin Kishchuna, and the Bach changes it to Mavoi. So a small village is going to be like a shchuna, at least according to our nusach at the Gemara, which means the way Rashi's learning, if it's kishchuna, it means if she's remarried, then they have to live apart from that shchuna. They can't be within the shchuna itself, and if it's a kohen, for sure it will be awesome. Let's see what Tosfos says. Kvarkot nidin kishchuna. The taima levishaein b'nei adam etzuyim sham. The reason why it's nidin kishchuna, even though there might be 10 houses in the kfar, there's for sure more than 3 houses, but why is it considered like in a big city within 3 houses, is because a small village, you're not going to have too many visitors frequented. Therefore, it's more possible for him to get together with her. Only a small village. A larger village. So Tosfos is telling us that a kfar katan, even though it's like a shchuna, it's even though it's bigger than a shchuna, we treat it like a shchuna because of the fact that there's very little traffic there. So they cannot live in the same neighborhood. So what if they're on equal footing in that neighborhood? Who has to move away? Does he have to move out, or does she have to move out? Toshma, the Tanya we learned, he nitches mi panav. She's the one who has to move. Ve'ein hu nitcha mi panav. He does not have to move for her; she has to move for him. However, but if the chutzner belonged to her, so they weren't just renting there, she owned the chutzner, maybe he was renting in her chutzner, then hu nitcha mi panav, then we make him move away. We're not going to uproot her from her own property. There are those who say that the reason why we won't uproot her from her own property is because kol kvuda bas melech pnima. If she has a place, you don't make her start wandering around to look for another place. Ibailu, haisa chatzar shel shneihem ma'u. What if they both equally own the chutzner? They were partners in the chutzner, so nobody has more of a koyach in the chutzner. What will be the halacha? Tashma, he nitches mipanav. She is the one who has to move for him. B'may askin, what exactly is this case of hoysa chatzar shel shneihem? I'm sorry. What is the case where the brisa paskins he nitches mipanav? B'may askin. If it was speaking in his chatzar, pshita, then it's pashut that she has to move away. So the brisa who gave us a psak halacha, he nitches mipanav, it has to be a halacha, psak halacha on a case where it's a chiddush. Elamai, it must be referring to when she owns the chutzner, and that's a big chiddush. Even when she owns the chutzner, she's got to move away. In fact, that's not logical either. We learned that if she owns the chutzner, in fact, he has to move. So where is there a chiddush? In which case is the brisa telling us that he nitchas mipanav? Elalavki agavna. It must be speaking where it's a chutzner shel shneim. Zok the Gemara, no, you don't have a raya. Dilma the agur meger. Maybe it was rented. So let's think about it. If both of them are renting in someone else's chutzner, there the Gemara wants to say is when he nitchas mipanav, she's got to move out. But if they both equally own it, then maybe she wouldn't have to move out. What's the difference? In either case, they each have an equal footing, an equal control over this property. What's the difference if they're both renting or if they're both owning? So the Ritva says, the ArScroll brings down the Ritva. The Ritva says that if she's just renting, then it's not fair to push her away. But could be if she owns it, she has a stronger connection to it, maybe then there would be a reason why we wouldn't make her leave. The Ritva doesn't say this, but other people say as far as if she owns a place, it's not respectful that she should have to go looking. If she's renting here anyway, you go tell her to rent somewhere else. But if she has a property here, it's not respectful that she should go looking. My havala. So what is the halacha l'maisa? We have the shaila, who moves, who's the one who moves. Tashma, it says, Hine Hashem metaltlach teltola gever. Hashem is going to make you travel around like a man, meaning that it's much, much more difficult. V'amarav teltulta de gaver kashim idetza. The pasuk is telling us, I'm going to make you travel around like a man. What's the difference if you're a man or a woman? The Torah says a man, it's much more difficult for a man to uproot himself and to move around. A woman is easier, she adapts better to changes in her environment. Men have a much harder time, and therefore it's mustaber that she should uproot herself because it's much easier, it's much less of a trauma for her to move. Tanar, what happens if it's lava heimena b'nichsei? This man borrowed money from his wife, but nechosim that belonged to her father, nichsim aluk, which means he has to pay it back. And he divorced her. So now she wants to come collect. So she wants to take him to the Torah, or she wants to come pick up her money. The halach is they shouldn't have a direct connection one to the other. They shouldn't do direct transactions. They should use a middleman. Rashi tells us that what we're talking about here is a kohen. A Yisrael who was Megarash's wife, where if he got back together with her, it wouldn't be an Isser. This wouldn't be a problem with them doing a business deal together. But a kohen who's not allowed to have relations with a woman once he divorces her, he shouldn't even do a transaction with her without a go-between. The Rishonim tell us that she's the one who is supposed to appoint the go-between. Okay. Amar Absheshes, the also the Kaman Ladina. What if they came together to a din Torah? We don't even take on the din Torah. We don't. A woman can go to the Torah by herself with a strange man, but with her ex-husband, if she was a kohen, they shouldn't be coming together. Rav Papa Amar, it's interesting. It's a good psychology lesson because even though they're adversaries, they're coming to carry out a din Torah against each other. We're still afraid that kurva could lead chas v'shalom to an aver. Rav Papa Amar, not only do we not take on their din Torah, shamuti mishamtinon lahu, we will put them into cherem. Rav Huda Bereda B'Shu Amar, negudi nami minagdin, we also give them malchus. And it's actually a machlokes if you're geiris nami or not. There are those who learn that this is a buildup. Rav Huna is adding to what Rav Papa said and saying not only is there cherem, there's also malchus. But there are those who learn is there's no cherem, there's only malchus. So it's a machlokes what's happening over here. Amar Nachman, Tana be'Evel Rabasi. We learned in the Masechta called Evel Rabasi, which Rashi tells us is Masechah Smachos. It says as follows: Hamed Devar Mamurim Sheniskarsam in Hanasu. When do we say that there's a problem with Korva? That's if they were once Nusua together, and then they had a get. Avokesh Sheniskarsam in Erison. But if they never had an intimate relationship because they were only Uresas, then Nifras Aideatzma, then she can even have a direct transaction with him. She'ain by gospel. If there was never Nisuin, then we don't say that there's that extra comfort level that we need to be concerned about. Hahu Aris Varusasoi, the also the Kamei de Rava. And Aris and Arusa came in front of Rava. I guess he was a Kohen, and they came to the entire. Yosef of Ada by Masna Kamei. Uki Rava Shlucha Bentai. And Rava said, you shouldn't be both here in the entire together. We're going to have to appoint a lawyer to represent your wife, your ex-wife, and then we can do the entire. Then we can do the entire. Amr Rabbi Masna, why do you need that? The Amr Nachman Tana Be'Evel Rabasi, that if they're only Aris Farusa and there's no Libai Gaspa, they don't need an intermediary. They can come together. Amr Lei, so Rava said, yes, that's the norm. But Kachazinan the Kagaisi Badadi. I saw that these people had too much of a relationship together and they were acting like they were once Nesua, so I felt that they need to have more of a separation. Ikadami, the case happened the opposite way. Is Loyuki Rava Shlich B'Tayim. Rava didn't put an intermediary because Rava held its Aris Varusa. Amal Ravada by Masna, Nekem Ashlucha B'Tayim. Why don't you make an intermediary? You should make an intermediary. Amar Lei, so Rava said, why should I? They're only Arusas. The Amar Rav Nachman, Tana Bevel Rabasi, which it says there that Dafka Min Nesuin, Gershom Min Nesuin requires an intermediary, not Min Nesuin, not Min Nerusin, Min Erison, because there's not Liba Gaspa. Amalei, so he answered back, Hani Mili Hechad Legaisi Be'adali. Yes, that would be that you don't need an intermediary if they're not too super comfortable with each other. We can see they're two chummy together. So he told his Rava, even though the Brisa says you don't need an intermediary, clearly these people are acting in such a way where they would need an intermediary. Of course, a cotton cannot say edus, but there are certain edus that a cotton sees that he can't say, but when he becomes an adult, then he'll be able to come back and say testimony. And one of the halachas are neman adam loymar zeh ksav yadai shel ava. A person is neman to say that this is the ksav yad of my father. V'zeh ksav yadai shel Rebbe, or this was the ksav of my Rebbe. So we're talking about being mekayim eshtar. When you're mekayim eshtar, you need to have two edim. One of these two edim could be a cotton, could have been a cotton when this star was written, and later on, when he's a gadol, he could say, this is my father's handwriting, he signed the star, this is my Rebbe's handwriting, he signed the star, or v'zeh ksav yadai shalachi, this is my brother's signature. Zocher hayisi beploinis sheyotza behinuma v'roisha perua. There was a discrepancy by a divorce. Was this woman married as a basula and she has the ksuba of Messiah, or was she an almana? So an adult can say, I remember when they got married, I remember that she was Yotza B'Numa V'Roisha Perua, which would indicate that she's a basula. I also remember that this person, Ish Ploini, let's call him Ruvain, used to leave school early to go to the mikveh so that he can eat truma at night. Then you would allow this person to eat truma d'Rabbanan based on the testimony of this adult, but he's only saying over a story that he recalls that occurred when he was a cut. Or he would come with us. I guess the person speaking would be a kohen as well. He would come with us and he would also get a chelik of the trumas. Or a base of pras. A base of pras is a field that had a caver in it that was plowed. So now there could be little pieces of bone anywhere. So he could say, this is the area where there was a problem, but out of this area, there's no problem. He's never to say that as well. The atkan hayini bon b'Shabbos. You can also say that the tchum goes up to here. What a person is non-neman to say edus is on the edus of Bominus, which require two kosher edim, such as saying that I know that Reuben used to have a right of access to go through Shimon's property. I know that there used to be this strip of land in Shimon's property that Reuben had a right to go through, because that's Dinei Mominus, and that would have to require two kosher edim. Or or Pliny had a place to stand and say a hesped in this property. They used to walk through this private property, and this was a place that he had a rights to. So this is already chosher mishpat halachos, which require two kosher eid. That we say that he's neman to say zeksav yodesh alaba to be mekayim ishtar. That's v'hu sheyesh gadol imoy. That's only if there's another aid with him, and the second aid is in fact an adult. So we're only accepting this compromised aidus if there's the other aid is a proper aid. Then Tosfos says, is truma. It's not referring to the cases where he's being matter someone to truma. The truma sagi be'echad. By truma, you only need one aid. So there, even without another aid, saying that this child I remember that he used to eat truma when he was younger, because once I have a second aid over there, I don't need him. I don't need a cut because one aid's enough. So Tosfos that we say we should are only by things that would have required two aidim to begin with. So it would have been enough with one. It's speaking in the case over here that we're only allowing him to be truma d'Rabbanan. If it's truma d'Oraisa, we wouldn't believe him with truma d'Oraisa unless there are two kosher aid. Okay, so let's see the Gemara weiter. Utricha. We need all these cases of Ksaviyah that he's neman. He's neman to say Ksaviyah shel Abba, Ksaviyah shel Rebbe, Ksaviyah shel Achi. Why does the Mishnah need to list of all these individual cases? Just say he's neman to be Mekayim Ishtar. So if we only know that he could verify the signature of his father, his father's signature he would have easily recognized. So that's something that you can believe him on. But Avol Rabbi Eloi. But maybe his Rebbe, he wouldn't have such a clear recollection of his Rebbe's signature. That's why the Mishnah has to speak out that the child is neman to verify his Rebbe's signature. People are sometimes fans of their Rebbe. They copy everything that their Rebbe does, especially little hated children. They always try to watch everything their Rebbe does. So they would have analyzed and imitated their Rebbe's signature. So they for sure would have a good recollection of it. Aval maybe not. If the Mishnah only tells us that they're neman to verify their father or their Rebbe's signature, I would say there's reasons in each case why we should rely on their verification of the signature. Avalochav, his brother, the Lesle loy havaloya, doesn't have either of these two milas. Maybe we wouldn't rely on the cotton to verify the signature. That kivun the kiyum shtarish midrabanan, since anyway the requirement to be mekayim shtar is midrabanan anyway. It's not required midiraisa. Him new rabbanan midrabanan. In the rabbanan's rules, the rabbanan could set him up any way they want. And they could believe him, even though normally he wouldn't be believed. My time, why are we believing that? That's the shtickle momnus. Aren't we forcing someone to pay Kesubos Messiah instead of Kesubos Mana? He says we can assume the vast majority of women who marry as a Basula. We only look at it as a Gilu Milsa Ba'almahu. We don't look at it as a full testimony. Rashi says, Klemer ain't davar tzarich edus. It doesn't really need edus because most women we know got married as Basulas. We're only using it just to give validity to the psak halacha bezin that they'll force him to give Messiah, but really without edus of the cotton, they can do that anyway. What's proof that someone eats truma that they're a kohen? Maybe they're the eved of a kohen. We don't know eved kohen who. Maybe this just proves that he's the eved of a kohen. How does it prove that he's a kohen himself? So Gemara Misayeh Levi Abshu ben Levi. Damar Abshu ben Levi. Also la Adam Shilamidus Adloi Torah. He also said in his testimony that he was Yochim Beis Sefer. This person used to go to Cheder. So clearly, if he used to go to Cheder, that cannot be an eved of a kohen. That must be the kohen himself. You can't teach an eved Torah. I'm going to show you a brayso which indicates that an eved could learn Torah. But Tanya Lova Himenu Rabbi, what if we see there's a question on whether or not this Adon freed his slave or not? And we see this Adon borrowed money from his slave. Well, that would really look like he's a free man. You don't borrow money from your eved. Also Rabbi Apotropos. Or what if his Adon made him in charge of something? Rashi's Masar Nechasav. He made some brokerage deal with him. Again, that slightly indicates that this is a free man. Or the Eved put on tefillin in front of his Odin, and the Eved is not mechuyev in mitzvah shezman grama. Yet his Odin saw him wearing tefillin, and the Odin didn't protest. Or he lamed 3 psukim, and there was no protest. It's not like tzilcheres. In other words, we can assume this is an eved, even though the eved were tefillin. We can assume this is an eved, even though the eved was learning Torah in the basic Knesses. So you have a raya from here that an eved could learn Torah in the basic Knesses, because here we're saying it's not a raya that he's a free man, but he was learning Torah. So hasam the ikri avad midaitai. There, the eved on his own went and learned 3 psukim. That could happen. That could happen, but it's not a proof that he's not an eved. When we say it's also for an eved to learn Torah, is the kanag by minig banim, when you're treating him like a son and you're literally sitting and teaching him Torah or sending him to Cheder. So that you're not allowed to do. And therefore, if the testimony of this adult was that I remember as a child, this person left Cheder to go to the mikveh, meaning he was in Cheder, that will actually be a good proof that this child was a kohen and not an eved. Litpoil lechel b'truma. We allow them to eat truma. Thank you very much. We're only being matter truma d'Rabbanan. We're not being matter truma d'Oraisa, and therefore his edus could also be regarding truma d'Rabbanan. Thank you very much. He used to also take a share with us in the goyim. He used to collect truma. Thank you very much. Maybe he was the eved of a kohen, and then the eved of a kohen also gets truma. Dr. Mori Tanan, command Omar in cholkin truma laeved elam kim rabbi imay. We're going according to the man Omar who holds that if an eved of a kohen who's entitled to truma goes to collect truma, we will not give him that truma unless his adon is with him. So it'll make a clear indication that he's getting only because of his adon. The Tanya we looked at Braisa with a machlokes whether or not you could give truma to an eved. Titania. Now, this is not a question if he can eat the truma. He surely can eat the truma. The question is if he can collect from the balabayas a chelik of truma. Titania. Ein cholken truma laeved elam ken rabbi imay. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. You will never allow an eved to eat truma unless his adon is with him. These are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yosy Emer yachalu sheyomer. He could say, and the case is Rashi tells us where we learned in Yavamis what happens if a Eishes Kohen mixed up her child with her Shivcha's child. In other words, they both were in labor together, they both gave birth together, and now the children got mixed up. So on each of these 2 children, it's a suffix if it's an Eved or if it's a Kohen. So if they if a kohen, if this suffix comes to the goyrin and he wants to collect truma from Yisrael, Rabbi Yosy holds he can say, Im kohen ani, if I'm the real kohen, tenuli b'shvelatzmi, give me because I'm entitled to truma as a kohen. Eved kohen ani, and even if I'm not a kohen, I'm only the eved, tenuli b'shvel rabbi, give me because I'm entitled to take because of my odin. So you see, Rabbi Yosy argues with Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds on the time that I'm an eved, I can't collect unless my odin is with me. Rabbi Yosy holds no, you can collect anyway. So Zok to Gemara, what's the machlokes about? Why did Rabbi Yehuda not allow the eved to ever get truma from the goyrin, and Rabbi Yosy allowed? Is because they would say if we saw someone getting truma in the goyrin, then we could even trust that we can assume he's a kohen miyuchas. And therefore we can't let the eved take truma, even though he might have a claim to the truma. We can't allow it to happen, because then people might mistakenly think he's a kosher yichus. But and therefore there's no concern in letting this eved take truma. So Zok to Gemara, you're asking a question of Vidom Evet Kainu. We're following the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda that if he got truma begorin, it's a pure right, he's a kohen, because otherwise he would not have gotten truma. China we learned, we had this Gemara in Yavamas. I never said Eidus. I never had testimony. And the one time that I said testimony, it was a flop. Once I did say Eidus about a person who's a kohen, and you know what? I was wrong, and because of me, an Eved was treated like a kohen. Frag to Gemara, can you actually suggest that something like that would have happened, and that a kilkel came out because of Rabbi Yosy? Hashta. Maybe the kol al yoda. We have the famous story of the donkey of Pinchas ben Yair who wouldn't eat Isser. So you see there's such protection. How could you suggest that Rabbi Yosy would have caused such a kilkel? Elo, that's not what happened. Elo bikshu lahalosh eved lakuna. They almost verified because of Rabbi Yosy's testimony that this eved was kosher lakuna, but they caught it on time. Alpi. They almost did it. Why is that? Because what happened was Chaza bar Asri Rabbi Yosy. Where did he see this kohen, this person getting truma? Where did Rabbi Yosy see it getting truma? In the city of Rabbi Yosy, where they were able to give even avodim truma because they were not mailim truma l'yosem. But also ba'asid Rabbi Yehuda. Where did he say testimony? He said this testimony, I saw Ploini get truma. He said that testimony in a city that was under the rule of Rabbi Yehuda, where it's mailim mi truma l'yosem. So they almost made a mistake. Eventually, they figured out that where did he get truma? He got the truma in Rabbi Yosy's place, which was not a raya anyway. But it was, he said, Dikshu lahalois, they were almost Maila Evedakuna until they chapped that the story occurred in a different jurisdiction where you do give avodim truma. Okay, what are the other things that
almost does count?
I'm sorry? What?
Almost does count.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cotton is also believed to say that this area is a Beis HaPras. My time, why is the adult believed on something that he only remembered from his childhood? Because Beis HaPras D'Rabbanan, it's not a Deraisa de Gechshash. The whole problem of a Beis HaPras is only Midrabbanan. Anyway, when you're walking through a Beis HaPras, what is the problem? The problem is there might be some other small bone fragments. So what you could do is, as you're walking through the Beis HaPras, you can use what we call a mind clearer. So what you do is a mind clearer, as if you're walking through a minefield, and you clear the minds as you go along. So what do? As you're walking, I guess you got to go on your hands and knees. You have to blow air in front of you. So if there's any small bone fragments, it will be moved to the side, and therefore you're not going to come into contact with a bone fragment. If it was stomped through, many people walk through it, then any bone fragment would no longer be there. Any size bone that could cause tuma would have been crushed into smithereens and pulverized by the people walking through the field, and therefore there would be no problem. So you see, the whole thing is they're abundant anyway, and that's why a child or an adult is believed to say testimony on something that he only saw when he was a child. The Tchum Shabbos is over here. Once again, it's not a Shalav Deraisa. Kasavar Tchum Derabanan, and therefore they're able to be miming this adult, even about something that occurred in his childhood. They neman loimer derech hayil plani b'makam hazeh, or mimiru mispeit hayil plani b'makam hazeh. My timer, because now it's already choshen mishpat. Afuki maman loim afkinan. For choshen mishpat, you need two kosher edim. You're actually giving somebody property rights. That's something that you would need two kosher edim. Tanu Rabbanan. Neman atidik loimer. A child is neman to say, Kach Omer li Abba, my father once told me, Mishpacha zu Tahira, this Mishpacha is Tar, Mishpacha zu Tameya, this Mishpacha is Tamei. Fragt the Gemara, Tahira u Tameya sol kedaitach? Well, how is a Mishpacha Tar, a Mishpacha Tamei? Ella, what it means is Mishpacha zu Ksheira. This is a Mishpacha who doesn't have bad yichus mixed into them. Mishpacha zu Psula, because they have some Isurim mixed into them. Or, Vishachalnu b'ketzatza shel bas ploni leploni. We ate at the shower at the ketzatza. Ketzatza is a type of ceremony that's done by a marriage. We ate by the ketzatza of bas ploni leploni. The Gemara is going to explain what that means. And v'shehayinu moilichim chala umatonos leploni kohen. If he was the child of a Yisrael, he could say, "My father used to send me with chala and matas kahuna." For me, myself, to deliver to a kohen. So that would bring a raya that the person who I delivered to was in fact a kohen. The person is only believed if the father sent him himself as a child to deliver it. If the testimony was that my father sent my brother with challah to this kohen, that wouldn't be accepted because maybe he's not clear about what happened. But if he himself was sent to deliver it to the kohen, then he's believed. What if this isn't a testimony of a memory that he had as a child and he just grew up? Rather, he's saying testimony about something that occurred when he was non-Jewish, but now he's Jewish, and he's saying testimony about something that he remembered seeing when he was not Jewish. Or Eved v'nishtachar, then ein nemonim, then they're not believed. The ein nemon loymar, you're not believed to say derech hayel aploni b'makam hazeh, maimudu mispeit hayel aploni b'makam hazeh, which is the other halacha in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan and Bereka Amar Ne'emanim. Rabbi Yochanan and Bereka said they're believed. Now, we had a whole bunch of halachas quoted above. In which specific halacha does Rabbi Yochanan and Bereka mean to say they're believed? Rabbi Yochanan and Bereka Haya. Ilema Seifa, if it's on the last case where we were talking about property rights, how could Rabbi Yochanan and Bereka justify such an argument that they should be believed? Afuki Mamanu. Everybody else you need two kosher edim. There's no place to compromise. El Aresha, he must be arguing on the case of Ovid Kechavim and Niskayer. V'chulam im haya Ovid Kechavim and Niskayer, Eved v'nishtachar ein nemanim. And on that, Rabbi Yochanan ben Bereka said, nemanim, they believe. So there's a machlokes if a ger is neman to say edus on something that occurred before he became Jewish. If an Eved is neman to say edus on something that occurred before he was freed. What is the machlokes about whether or not they should be believed? Since at the time that he thought he was an Ovid Kechavim, we'll have a daik. He definitely didn't focus on it properly. He didn't realize its impact. And therefore, his memory might not be perfectly clear because he never focused on the issue originally. Rabbi Yochanan ben Bereka Savar, Kivin the Daite Ligurye, no one is Megayer from one day to the next. Obviously, he's been thinking about it for a while. So the likelihood is, he's saying Edus on something that he saw when he was already aware of the Jewish issues, and therefore made it havadaik. We could trust him. Now the Gemara, the Brisa told us earlier that the person is done to say, I was at the ketzatza of the following shidduch of Bas Ploni Leploni. So what is this ketzatza? My ketzatza. The Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in the Brisa, Ketzat ketzatza. What is a ketzatza? Echad min ha'achim, you have a family of Kahanim, and one of the brothers decided that he's going to marry a grusha, shaloi kalocha. He married a woman who was going to be passing his ichos. So everybody wants to make sure that nobody will confuse their kosher yichus for their brother's pasal yichus because he's now marrying a woman who's going to render his children chalolim. So what do? They needed to make it public. Boin b'nei mishpacha umaviin chavis milaya pears. The b'nei mishpacha come and they bring a chavis milaya pears. And pears are sweets. Nowadays, it would be the equivalent of candies, things that little children are excited to have. They they open up this barrel of sweet fruit smack in the middle of the main square in the city. And they announce, Achenu b'nei Yisrael, my dear brethren, Shimu Achenu, listen. Shimu, listen. Achenu Pliny, our brother Beryl, Nosa Isa Sheina Geneslai. He married a woman who was going to passel his children. Umisyareim anu shema yisayir zayir b'zarein. And we're afraid that our children will be mixed up with their children. Boyu ukhulechem dugma ladoris. Take this candy, which will imprint in your memory that shelo yisayir zayir b'zareinu. So in generations to come, when people are going to be afraid to be mishadach with us because they think that our family is mixed up, you'll know you were here and you'll know it's just this brother, but all the other branches of the family are kosher. And why is it dafka candy? Because it's the children that we want to make them aware of it. Because the next generation needs to know about it, not the old fogies who aren't going to be around anyway. We want little children who are going to remember in future generations that our yichus is pure. So that's why they did this. And this is what we're talking about. A child can say, I remember there was a tzotza, and therefore only this brother and his einiklach might be problematic, but the rest of the family, you could completely rely on that they're kosher yichus. Baruch Hashem, we finished the second parak, and b'li neder, hadin alach isha shenas armala, hadin alach isha shenas armala, hadin alach isha shenas armala. That's Hashem Yisparach. I wanted to start El Nayr today because I want to try to get ahead because we're missing Tisha B'Av, but it wasn't meant to be for today. I'll try tomorrow again to get ahead. So just some of the things that we learned over the last couple of letters. We learned about Pesha Osar. We learned about Naman Shuya Kiloi. We learned about Shvuya, that we assumed that she was Nenas. Sometimes yes, sometimes not. Depends on if it's Tamash Shvuya. If it's Tamash Shvuya, we assume that she was Nenas. If it was Nechbisha, there's a tzad to say that for a moment she wasn't Nichshal, but for the Nefashos Kubi she was Nichshal. According to Rashi and Tosfos, we learned so many beautiful halachas here. In the next parak, all we're really going to be learning about is Knas and Kamei B'Dramim. Okay, Gavaltik, thank you very much.